Are you wanting to buy your first investment property, but you don't have a lot of money to play with? Or maybe you think your credit is holding you back. Today I'm going to share with you 3 ways that you can use to buy your first investment property. Each strategy requires very little to no money down, and when done correctly, your credit is even used. So let's get started. I know when you're thinking about buying your first investment property, it can be exciting and can also be scary at the same time. You want to do everything right, but you're also afraid of messing up. So you read books, you research, you study like crazy, even to the point of becoming paralyzed by all the information. But today, I'm going to show you how, just by taking a little bit of action, you can have your first of many investment properties that are producing you monthly income each and every month. Let's go over how a lease purchase works step by step. These are the terms with the seller. Let's say we have a home seller that's asking $200,000 for their home. We contact them and we find out about the house and we negotiate a lease purchase with them. The terms that we agree to are a $200,000 purchase price, $1,500 for a monthly payment, and we have a 3-year term, which gives us the right to buy this home at any time during the next 3 years. We also agree to start making the first payment within 60 days. And to make everything legal, we give $50 as option consideration to the seller. So now we have 60 days to find a tenant buyer who will move into the property and cover that payment. These are the terms with the tenant buyer. We now advertise the property for sale as a lease purchase, and we find a tenant buyer who will pay $225,000 for the home. They have $10,000 option consideration to put down. This option consideration is non-refundable, but it does go toward the purchase price when they buy. The market rent for the area is $1,900 a month, and we agreed to give them 3 years to buy the home. And it takes us about 30 days to find a qualified tenant buyer. So let's break this down. We have a sales price with the tenant buyer for $225,000, and we have a purchase price with the seller for $200,000. That gives us a $25,000 spread just for being in the middle of the deal. That's our profit. And since they're putting down $10,000 option consideration, that will reduce $10,000 from the spread because we're going to collect it the day they move in. That leaves $15,000 that we will collect once they complete the sale. The remaining $15,000 will be our back-end profit. Now you may be thinking, is $25,000 the only profit that I'm going to make on this deal? But we haven't even figured in the monthly cash flow yet. Remember, we negotiate a monthly payment of $1,900 with the tenant buyer, and our monthly payment to the seller is $1,500 a month. So that's $400 that's going to go into our pocket each and every month. Remember, we also gave them 3 years to buy the home. So let's say it takes the full 3 years to buy. $400 times 36 months, that's $14,400 in total cash flow on this deal. Now let's go through and add up all the profit on this deal. We make $10,000 option consideration the day they move in. We collect $15,000 back in profit once they buy the home. And we have the potential to make $14,400 in total cash flow on this deal if they go the full 3 years. All total, that's $39,350 on this deal. That's minus the $50 it costs to get into this deal. Not bad to turn $50 into almost $40,000 just by having a little bit of knowledge and know-how. Let's go over the owner finance strategy step by step. These are the terms with the seller. The seller is asking $200,000 for the home. We call and we talk to the seller about their home, and through our discussion we find out that the seller does not have a mortgage on the home. It's actually owned free and clear. The deal we negotiate with the seller is a $200,000 purchase price with owner financing. That means the seller will act as the bank in this deal. We also agree to pay the seller a $1,500 a month principal-only payment. This means that every month we pay $1,500 to the seller, it reduces that from the $200,000 that's owed. We agree to a 3-year balloon on this home. That means that we don't have to cash the seller out for 3 years. We also don't have to go to a bank to get into this deal. We also agree to pay a $50 binding deposit to make things legal. These are the terms that we negotiate with the buyer. Since we now own this home, we can either sell it outright or sell it on a lease purchase. We decide to sell it on a lease purchase, and we find a tenant buyer who will pay $225,000 for the home. They have $10,000 option consideration to put down the day they move in, and we agree to a $1,900 a month monthly payment. And since we have a 3-year balloon with the seller, we can offer a 3-year term to the tenant buyer. And it takes us about 30 days to find a qualified tenant buyer for the home. Let's look at the spread again. We have a sales price with the tenant buyer for $225,000, and we have a purchase price with the seller for $200,000. That's a $25,000 spread, with $10,000 being collected today as option consideration, and $15,000 as back-end profit collected when the tenant buyer buys. But is there more back-end profit to come? Let's see. We now have to take into account the principal paydown on this deal. Remember, every month that we pay the seller $1,500, it reduces $1,500 from the balance that's owed. So at first we have our $200,000 balance that we owe to the seller for seller financing it to us, and we're paying them $1,500 a month. And we have a 3-year balloon on this deal. At $1,500 a month for 36 months, let's see how much will be reduced from the balance. That's $54,000 reduced from the balance within 3 years. So 3 years from now, we will only owe $146,000 to the seller instead of the full $200,000. Let's go over the monthly cash flow we will also get on this deal. The monthly payment from the tenant buyer is $1,900 a month, and the payment to the seller is $1,500 a month. So that's a $400 a month cash flow. And at 3 years, that's $14,400 if the tenant buyer goes the full 3 years. Let's add things up to see what we can make on this deal by using owner financing. We're collecting a $10,000 option consideration the day the tenant buyer moves in. We have an initial back-end profit of $15,000 when the tenant buyer buys the home, and we can collect up to $14,400 in total cash flow if it takes 3 years for the tenant buyer to buy. Now we need to add in the principal reduction from the $1,500 every month. Remember, that was $54,000 in 3 years' time. So the total profit on this deal is $93,350 minus the $50 for the binding deposit. That's not too bad to turn $50 into $93,000 on this deal. The potential is unlimited depending on what you can negotiate with the seller. Let's go over the subject to strategy step by step. These are the terms with the seller. The seller's asking $200,000 for the home. We call and talk to them and ask them about their home, and they tell us they're going through some financial difficulties. In fact, it's getting harder for them to make the payment each and every month, and they're afraid to go into foreclosure and mess up their credit. We also find out that they owe about $200,000 on their mortgage, and the monthly payment on that mortgage is $1,500 a month. The deal we negotiate with the seller is to buy the home subject to the existing financing. What this means is that their mortgage will stay in their name, but the seller will deed us the property. There's still 25 years remaining on the mortgage, so we could technically hold this house the whole time since there isn't a balloon on it. So we will own this property subject to the financing in place. The debt will stay in the seller's name, and we do not sign for any debt, but we are agreeing to pay those monthly payments, and we don't have to go to a bank. We also agree to pay the seller $50 as a binding deposit to make things legal. These are the terms that we negotiate with the buyer. Since we now own this home, we can either sell it outright or sell it on a lease purchase. We decide to sell it on a lease purchase, and we find a tenant buyer who'll pay $225,000 for the home. They have $10,000 option consideration to put down the day they move in, and we agree to a $1,900 a month payment. And we give them 3 years to buy the home. And it takes us about 30 days to find a qualified buyer for this house. Let's look at the spread on this deal. We have a sales price with the tenant buyer at $225,000, and we have a purchase price with the seller at $200,000. That's a $25,000 spread, with $10,000 of that $25,000 being collected today as option consideration, and the remaining $15,000 as an initial back-end profit collected when the tenant buyer buys. Plus, during these 3 years, we will have principal reduction because we bought it subject to the existing financing that was in place. Let's say within 3 years, the mortgage balance reduces around $10,000. That amount will also be added to the back end profit when the tenant buyer completes the sale. Let's also look at the monthly cash flow on this deal. The monthly payment from the tenant buyer is $1,900 a month, and the payment to the seller's bank is $1,500 a month. So that gives us a monthly cash flow of $400 a month, and at 3 years, that will be $14,400 if the tenant buyer goes the full 3 years. Let's add things up to see what we can make on this deal by using the subject to strategy. We're collecting a $10,000 option consideration the day the tenant buyer moves in, and we have an initial back-end profit of $15,000 when the tenant buyer buys the home. And we can collect up to $14,400 in total cash flow for the 3 years that it takes the tenant buyer to buy. Now we add in the principal reduction from the 3 years, and that's $10,000 that we will also get on the back end. So the total profit on this deal is $49,350 minus the $50 binding deposit. That's not too bad to turn $50 into $49,000 just by having the right knowledge. So those are the 3 ways, step by step, how you can buy your first investment property with no money or credit needed. I hope you learned a lot, and I hope you can use some of these strategies to acquire your first investment property, because no one deserves success more than you. If you have any questions about lease purchase, subject to, or owner financing, please feel free to call me. I answer my own phone. My number is 314-764-5656. Or go to my website, damonboudreaux.com, and schedule a free 15-minute consultation. If you like this video, be sure to like and subscribe for more real estate investing content to come. See you in the next video.